Salman, guys. Today is January the 17th. A very significant day for me because this day, 8 years ago, I became a father. So my firstborn, Uzita, was born 8 years ago. So happy birthday to my boy. But it's also a huge one because it is the beginning of school for us South Africans. It's the first day back for our kids. So I've got three, grade one, the middle one is in grade one, Uzita's in grade three, and the last one was Sase Kresh. It's always such an emotional day for the kids. It's an emotional day for parents, especially parents who are getting into the school system for the first time. Any sort of formal education, or if you're a parent who's never taken your child to a creche, whatever, and this is your first day. It's such an emotional day, a lot of tears, a lot of pressure on teachers. I used to be a teacher, so a lot of pressure there because you are given this precious cargo, the most, the assets of the family, I guess, for a lot of people. And the reason why I'm doing this video is we need to get to a point where, as parents, we stop putting all the pressure on ourselves. It is very, very important to invest in a good school, but it is not more important than breaking yourself down, breaking your back in order to put yourself in a space that is of some sort of status. Currently on your social medias, certain schools, certain IEP private schools are trending. The school fees attached to that. And you see time and time again where people are now putting, or have been, I don't know, a social status on the type of school. I've got many friends in their 30s that don't have kids yet. And a huge concern or a huge point that they always raise that kids are so expensive. Kids are as expensive as your standard of living, much like the car you drive. So if you choose to drive a 911, a Porsche 911, then obviously the car is going to be expensive if you are earning 50K and the car installment is 40K. That's going to be very expensive. But if you're earning 50K and the car that you are driving is a 2,000 Rand a month car, then that's an affordable car for you. So it's all based on your standard of living. Is the car expensive? Again, based on your standard of living. So if you are buying a car that costs 2,000 Rand a month, very different from a 40,000 Rand a month. If your school fees for your child is 1,000 Rand a month, it's very different than someone who's paying 15,000 Rand a month. Just understand your standard of living, guys. Don't get to a point where you're now dying, month after month after month because you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, because you're trying to keep up with certain mindsets or certain people based on social media. Now you're going to realize you're going to get to 35 and you got no kids because you're trying to send your kids to like Hilton, that costs 30,000 plus a month, and you get to 35, you have no kids, 36, 37. By the time you look up, you're like 45 with no kids. It's easier, I guess, for males, but it's not as easy for females. A lot of our sisters will say rubbish like, I'll get IVF or you don't even know the costs. You don't know anyone outside of TV, and maybe that one rich aunt that you might have come across that maybe told you something about IVF or maybe told you something about freezing your eggs. Guys, do the research around that. Do the research around getting a sperm donation or buying sperm. Do your research around IVF. Do the research in terms of the level of success. Do all of that just because you're trying to earn 200,000 Rand before you have your first child. I understand certain pressures that society puts on us. I understand the importance of driving that car based on social media, living in that area based on social media, the importance of having that partner based on social media, and again, as a result, you defer. And unlike a car where you can buy a Ferrari at age 55, 60, 70, a child is very, very much different. I'm very, very blessed with where my kids go to school. Very, very blessed, very, very privileged. But it's, again, as privileged as I may be, I'm coming from a point where I am a parent and I'm an ex-teacher. And I'm here to tell you that the gap between these schools is not as big as you think. There's a social stigma there, there's a social this there, there's a social that there. All these things where you think, oh, a private school is so much better, then it's really not. It's really, really not. Once you actually get into the meat of it, once you actually get into the classroom and you actually realize that a government school, a good government school, again, I'm not talking about the worst versus the best. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just comparing the guys in the middle. A good government school with a good private school, the education is very, very much on par. If you look at the sports, the top sports schools in this country, let me talk about from a rugby point, many of them are government schools. If I look at schools like your Grey PE, which is a Grey High, when I look at schools like Selborne, Glenwood, when I look at schools like Maritzburg College, when I look at schools like, I don't know, ENJ, Calling Zazi, Northcliffe High, those are all government schools that are phenomenal at sports. Better than most private schools, better than 99% of private schools. So again, from an academic point, the gap there is no gap. There is no gap. I know people try and twist stats around, and they try. Guys, please don't live outside of what you can afford. Try and stay in your lane and do the best that you can. You forcing yourself to put your child in a school that costs 7,000, 10,000, knowing full well, Guti, you're not in that financial bracket, don't do that. The schools that are available for you, those schools are way better than you can ever imagine. Way, way better. Do not put yourself, do not put your partner in that, or do not defer over and over until you, only for financial reasons. No. By the time you look up, by the time you look up, you're 42. You've increased the child of your any child problems, Down syndrome, birth problems, all because, again, uchachimali. Life is not just about uchachimali, guys. There's a happiness there. And I saw it this morning when I saw my little kids starting school. I saw it this morning when Uzita, I got to say happy birthday with a nice, beautiful kiss. That's what it's about. That's really, really what it's about, And yes, we all want to send our kids to Harvard for that social status, but that doesn't guarantee what they'll live a happy, fulfilled life. My role models, I don't know what schools they went to. When I think of a Trevor Noah, I don't know what school he went to. Whether he went to a rich school, a government school, whether he went to a school, I say, look, Shini, look at how successful he is. If I look at the business guys in this country, if I look at Ramaphosa, Tito Mboweni, when I look at the business guys, I don't know if they went to the best IB schools. I don't think so. When I look at the leaders, Zuma, when I look at the leaders that I look up to, at least, from a leadership point, it doesn't tell me, Uguti, these guys went to a rich private school. So let's not get lost in those things. Let's really narrow down the core fundamentals of what we're trying to achieve. And that's happiness in our kids to be as successful as they define success for themselves. And guys, there's so many things that I can talk about on this topic, but please have a sit down. Don't get lost in the social media hoo-ha. Don't get lost in Ingania bees, Ingania. Everything is expensive if you want to make it expensive. Even getting a t-shirt, if you decide to get a t-shirt from Louis Vuitton, of course it's going to be expensive if it's outside of your bracket. If you go to where you can afford, then it's fine. My brother likes using a percentage, so he'll say something like, your kids shouldn't cost you more than, I think he says 20% of your net, that's your take home, your net salary. That's including their schooling. So if you again are earning 50K as a net salary, not your big one, the one that's your SMS, then your kids should cost you 10K. That's his formula. He's not saying 10K each, he's saying that 10K goes to your kids. So if you have 2 kids, then that's 5K, 5K. If you have 10 kids, it's 1K, 1K, 1K. If you have 1 kid, 10K. And that's, again, a formula so that you don't squeeze yourself and understand what your lane looks like. Everyone has a lane. Make sure that the lane doesn't break you from an anxiety, depression. Make sure, Guti, now you're busy looking at other people thinking that you're less than. It's not like that, guys. It's not like that. Don't get lost. My role models, Cheslin Colby, he didn't go to those big private schools. He didn't go to those big rugby schools, So just understand, Guti, it's not determined, Guti, your child become this huge success just based on the school that they go to. This whole bullshit narrative around, it's got a chance to network, it's got a chance to... I don't think guys like Boma Robert Gomete or these guys that we're seeing all the time that have these rich, driving these fancy cars, I don't think they all went to a Hilton or went to a Michael House where they got to network. I think there's always positive in building any good relationships from a business point, from a friendship point, from a romantic point. It's always good building great relationships. I've built amazing relationships from guys that went to different schools all over the country, so it wasn't just limited to the friends that I got from high school. So for me, just comes across this network thing like a weak excuse for you not wanting to put yourself out there. Just because you went to that school doesn't mean that you're going to magically make billionaire friends. It doesn't work that way. There's many kids that went to a great Bloem in Bloemfontein, great college. They didn't become Springboks. They didn't. Just because you went to Selborne doesn't mean that you automatically going to become this or that. You still have to work. So for us as parents, make sure you invest in your child and you just don't leave the certain school because you chased a certain status. And I think for a lot of us, that send our kids to certain schools, it speaks more to us and what we're trying to get for our own validation, or I don't know what the word is, versus the actual child. Don't get lost in this money thing. Don't get lost in doing things for a social status. It's going to hurt you. And because it hurts you, it's going to ultimately hurt the child. Put your child in the lane, and then you as a parent invest as best as you can. Anyway, I hope all the parents had a fantastic first day back. For those that aren't parents and considering to be parents, please think about it. Really think about it. Don't let the money part be the biggest factor of why you shouldn't have a child. Yes, money is incredibly important, but again, other things are important, such as happiness, such as making sure that the child is healthy and a success according to their definition. Gentanda, please like, share, subscribe, and have yourselves a fantastic day. Sure.